counter narrative to that, at least not within the school system. But then you talk about the indoctrination taking place within the classroom. That shouldn't come as a surprise to anyone. And honestly, I hate to vilify the teachers because they are doing exactly what they were trained to do in these universities.
That's the truth. That is the truth. They are doing exactly what they were trained to do. And I've made this point over and over again. That's why we have to look at the university system a little bit here. And yeah, Oklahoma needs to, I think we've done a good job.
Insight on that,
I do. I have a little bit of insight on that. And when you say that teachers are trained to do, are doing what they're trained to do, that's exactly right. And whether you're talking about the colleges of education, when you have DEI offices and DEI deans in every college at the university designed to push one political agenda, that's what the kind of teachers you're going to get. And
that's also the kind of journalists you'll get. It's the kind of doctors you'll get. It's the kind of lawyers you'll get, and naturally the kind of lawmakers you're going to get.
Right. And I think that we've had to highlight some of the issues that have come out with teachers, like say with the Summer Boimier in Norman, you know, that comes out and shares a QR code, right, to the book Gender Queer.
And then spins her story in the most manipulative, deceptive way possible.
Yes, and it gets help with that from the media to do it. You know,
what are you talking about?
and that's the thing.
Actually, I'm busting your chops. That's my favorite podcast of yours.
Oh, thank you.
Break down with a journalist, or how a journalist reported a story, and then how it snowballed from there, and that the correction of the story, if there ever was one, was a minuscule fraction of the initial incorrect allegation. And I speak from some position of authority because I worked in this world for 20 years of TV newsrooms. And I know what used to happen, and I know what's happening now.
Well, and I think thank you so much for the compliment, because that's high praise coming from you. Thank you.
One good show.
Yeah, I know. I got a big bump from that good show, but the point of that is that it started a national narrative, and it was done the night before an election. That's the other part too, is that the journalist in question tweeted out something at 9:15 at that night that was patently false, that was probably given to her directly from the person who wanted to spin that narrative, and within 6 hours you had 10,000 retweets, and it's a whole
totally wildfired. But let me ask you this, because you deep dived into the story, or deep dove, or whatever the word is, and I was so confused about deep dive or deep dove, I forgot what my question was going to be. You know, when the reporter initially put up this tweet, which is what really went viral, and then a lot of the national narratives built off of that. I'm sorry, I'm going through a little Peter.
Yeah, that's all right.
Did she cite a specific source?
No, what she said was unnamed sources, or was a source close to. It was, you know, and then what she actually did too was 3 or 4 hours later put down in there that she wasn't removed, right, or that she wasn't fired, or
and then just for background for the audience, we're talking about this teacher in Norman, who put up a QR code to the Brooklyn Public Library, and all the books, and I'm not going to say banned because that's a ridiculous
they were not
word.
banned.
They're books that are not, I guess, easily or books that maybe parents didn't want in Norman public schools.
Right.
She circumvented the will of the parents, provided this, quit, and then painted it as if she was the victim,
as if she was fired,
and as if she had been fired,
right?
And then that narrative was reinforced from a blue check.
Yeah, it was reinforced from a blue check, and then it was spun out. I mean, you had Vice News, you had NBC, all saying this, and what it did locally was, this was right before the primary of April Grace and Ryan Walters, and the teacher who had done this had endorsed April Grace. I mean, on her Twitter feed before this. And so it set the tone, and they tried to spin it in the bounds of 1775, which HB 1775, which is the CRT bill.
Like
it had absolutely nothing to do with HB 7075. Nothing, but they spun it that way. And what upset me the most about it was that you had a journalist who was smart, who knew that that wasn't the case, that threw it out that way, and you had a Twitter engine that spun it throughout the whole country. And there are going to be thousands and hundreds of thousands of people, going back to your point about people calling Republicans Nazis. That's why they do it, because Nazis banned books, didn't they? Right? This wasn't a book banning. It wasn't even close. It wasn't even close, which gets us into. I just think it's something that we need to tell people that the media tries to do, even in Oklahoma, is they try to spin a narrative against conservative values. And we need to make sure that's why we're doing shows like this.
Now, I will say, I hate to paint everyone with one broad brush.
Yeah.
There are a lot of really good, legitimate, ethical journalists in this state.
Absolutely.
The problem, not to get too far into the weeds.
No, I agree.
The problem is largely a management who does not enforce a code of journalistic ethics, which was standard operating procedure for every newsroom I ever worked in a million years.
So tell me about that for a second. Tell me about that. What would you have done in that situation? So you're the reporter in question. Yeah, no, yes, if you were the news director, it's 9:15 at night.
Okay.
And she gets a tip.
Okay.
And she tweets it out from her blue check, because she got a blue check because she's a member of that news organization, right? Do these news directors have that kind of editorial control over what a journalist tweets on their blue checked account if they're representing a station, so to speak?
Ultimately, yes. I would think, knowing what I know of the hierarchy of management within a television station, yes. Again, back when I was banging, back when I was a news anchor, I signed a contract, and in that were a number of stipulations that, anything that I do for the station, in my capacity as an anchor, belongs to the station. So, like this podcast will be a video that remains of it. It doesn't belong to me. It belongs to Project 46.
Right.
Anyway, within that is number one, a morals clause, or at least there used to be. And then number two, there is, and honestly, this wasn't even in the contracts because it was just so understood that you never, ever express a political opinion. It was expected, and I always was my whole life until I got out of news. I was registered as an independent, as I should have been,
right?
But it's I keep extensive profiles on every reporter, and I would say extensive, but profile, and how many are registered with political parties on both sides, and it's actually pretty evenly split.
Really,
but they shouldn't be. I again, don't let me talk about this because I'll talk about it all day.
That's okay. That's okay.
Well,
I think it's good to have a background on how a newsroom works, and maybe how, especially the night before an election. You know what I'm saying? When you're talking about Ryan was in a close race with April at that point, and
it was a runoff in August.
It was a runoff, right? So it was the second in the primary, and this seemed to show a clear bias towards a narrative that would support a certain candidate by the news media. And although we may expect that from our national news, Fox or even NBC or CBS, you're not supposed to see that kind of thing at the local level.
You're not supposed to see it anyway.
I know.
But you know what? I mean, part of me is, I see the value of TV news, and I see its obviously decline and inevitable obscurity. So you know what? Let them write their own obituary. Go ahead.
Yeah.
And the thing is, if you want to give news and information from a political perspective like we're doing, knock yourself out. It's a free country. The reason it angers me personally so much is that they're claiming the standard of objectivity that is built upon the people who established it.
Absolutely.
Yes, and so it's a bait and switch. Right, it's like we are in terms of they are still under the umbrella of we are unbiased. You can trust us. We're and now but
when it's
slowly they started
obvious that you're not. And again, if you want to do that, knock yourself out. But don't claim to be something that you're not.
Right.
You know why? Because you lose credibility. And once you've lost credibility as a news outlet, your whole business model's in the toilet. So go ahead.
Yeah, let them do it. Let them, and that's why I think organizations like the Daily Wire or even Red River TV or Project 46 are gaining
obvious
ground here, is because they are honest about what it is, the point of view that they're bringing. You know what I
Yes.
say? When you know when you're
Yes.
turning into the Daily Wire, that you're getting a conservative perspective
Sure.
on things.
Yes.
You know, you may get different levels of conservative perspective, but it's
Mhm.
going to have a conservative bend.
And
And
okay,
they
go ahead.
no, and they tell you that out front. They're not saying,
Yeah.
you know, we are the unbiased news. Come here for the facts and only the facts, ma'am. Kind of situation. Go ahead. What were you gonna say?
I don't even.
Yeah.
Know.
Okay. Well,
I think about journalism in. Yeah, forget it. Go ahead. Go
Well,
ahead. I'll talk about it all day.
well, that gets me to the next thing I want to talk about here in terms of how parents are treated,
Mhm.
how sometimes a media will focus on things or not focus on things, or where Fox News might focus on something that NBC will not.
Mhm.
You know, and let's bring up this story, which has been a big deal here in Oklahoma. That here on Fox News, you can see judge rules Oklahoma parent can't be banned from school property, calls it an effort to suppress expression. An Oklahoma parent, and this is foxnews.com, okay, and they're running it. They're conservative, more conservative leaning. Everybody
Mhm.
knows that. An Oklahoma parent was banned from school property after a heated exchange with a board member about explicit books. Okay. And so let me just read a little bit of this. A judge ruled Monday that an Oklahoma parent could not be barred from school property after confronting a member of the board of education, as well as a reporter about explicit books in the district's library. On October 10th, Tim Ryland, a good guy, he calls himself a liberal loudmouth, shout out to him, went to a Wasso school board meeting and to protest a book that his daughter had brought home from the library. The book, called Blankets, written by Craig Thompson, is a coming of age autobiography that depicts the author's first love and sexually abusive babysitter. And without going and just sitting here and reading the whole
Mhm.
story, first of all, Tim's a Democrat and he leans left. And so, but he was upset about this book being in the hands of his daughter, bringing it home and it being made available not by some creep on the street,
Mhm. Mhm.
but by the school. And when he came to talk about it, when he came to confront the elected officials and the reporters who were covering it, he gets accused of being abusive and going after them and banned from the public school, you know, property and from
Mhm.
these meetings.
And sporting events.
Yes.
Multiple
Mhm.
videos.
Yeah, and that, so when we go back to the subject of assassination, you know, that we talked about at the very beginning,
Mhm.
I doubt. Well, let's use this example. When parents were coming in, or when you had a group of people coming in Norman to defund the police late at night during a council meeting, screaming and yelling and hollering,
Mhm.
it led to the mayor and the council defunding the police. They didn't kick those people out. They didn't ban them from the meetings, right? So there was two rule books, but this one person comes in, talks to one of his elected officials after the session
Mhm.
in the parking lot, and he gets banned from all meetings. How do we not, since Andrew, you brought up the point that we shouldn't take their tactics, that we shouldn't adopt their point of view, how do we not begin to treat them that way if that's what is happening? If you have this blatant hypocrisy.
Janelle has school age kids.
Well, no, yeah, let's go
I'm
into
gonna
Janelle.
defer
What
to
do you think about that?
What's your take?
As far as, the treatment towards parents, or as far as the double standard?
It has the double standard.
Well, one of the things that, about this is that I think that we're in new territory. And so I think oftentimes people are struggling to have these conversations because they're like, well, what do we do? We never had this problem before. Used to,
Mhm.
parents could walk into a school board and not have any problem, be able to talk. And now it's like, oh my gosh. And we've seen this whole thing with parents all over the entire country, where parents are being arrested and, told that you can't come in here and talk, and they're not being violent. They're not doing anything. I think that it's knowing how to push back without being a part of the issue, which can be difficult,
Mhm.
at the same time. Um, I think that part of the reason why people like this, this organization that we have here, I think it's very important because we can shed light on what's actually going on without dipping into the ditch and
Yeah.
having to get ourselves dirty. I think it's a way for us to shed light on things like this. You had the dad in Virginia, exact same thing. His daughter was raped in the bathroom by a young boy who
Yes.
dresses as, I'm a girl, and he's the one that gets arrested at a school board meeting
Yeah.
because he decided that, hey, I want to talk about what happened to my daughter. And they were like, oh, well, we have special protections for people who identify as girls and blah, blah, blah. The father got a little upset. He wasn't
Right.
violent,
Yeah,
but
the
it was
rape
still
isn't the crime. You
ex-
talking about the rape is the
exactly,
Yes.
crime.
exactly. So
Yes.
how do we, empower parents? How do we encourage parents, to say you have a voice without them being labeled? I'm just going to tell you right now, there's a lot of parents right now that are very quiet, and it's because they don't want to end up like this guy.
Yeah.
They don't want to end up like the guy in
Who
Virginia.
would? And
Exactly.
even if you're passionate about it, do you want to subject your kid
Do you
to
want
that?
that? Do
No.
you want
Well,
that?
but
But to
Exactly.
sacrifice your child
Yep.
to make this point,
Yep.
it's tremendously unfair.
Yeah.
Well, and that
Yeah.
we can't forget that the tone was set
Yes.
by the federal government.
Mhm.
When
Called them terrorists,
right,
yeah.
when they call them terrorists, and then work with the
Yeah.
National School Board Association
Mark, I'm
with the
gonna disagree
FBI.
with you. I'm going to disagree with you.
Okay.
This did not start at the federal government.
Well,
This
no, I'm talking
started
about
at
in terms of the
yeah.
recent times, in terms of the tone being accepted.
Right, but,
You know-
but I'm trying to point out a bigger problem that I think for Republicans, myself included, and dropped the ball because these leftists, knowing they couldn't win state houses,
Oh,
you know,
yeah.
what did they do? They went where no one was looking.
Mhm.
School boards,
It's so
city
true.
council.
That's right.
So
meetings.
true.
This came from the ground
Well, you-
up.
Mhm.
And once you have 30 years of people going through an educational system being indoctrinated into this stuff
Mhm.
and not getting any legitimate counter narrative, or any counter narrative that they get is
Yeah.
dismissed as stupid or evil,
Mhm. Mhm.
then this is the manifestation of that, I think.
No,
Well,
and
I
we,
could
we
be
no,
off.
we no, we forgot that the philosophy of the schoolhouse in one generation will be the philosophy of government in the next. We forgot that.
Yeah, right.
But I'm talking about in terms of the way that they're treated at these meetings.
Parents.
Yeah, but
Mhm.
that parents are treated, that or even public meetings in general, is that in the last 3 years you had an acceptance. So a more
Oh, yeah.
macro example of you can go out and protest George Floyd's killing
Yeah.
during COVID, and that's okay.
Mhm.
But you can't go out and protest, anything on the right in the same fashion, because somehow your political leaning was a COVID killer or not.
Mhm.
And you just had this kind of
Yeah.
systemic top down, and the
Well,
federal
can I
government.
just say, I
Yeah.
think in that one sentence, you nailed everything that's wrong with journalism today.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay.
Where were the reporters?
Mhm.
Where were the reporters
Mhm.
asking city officials,
Yeah.
why is a riot okay, but church isn't?
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
That should have been the dynamic. It was an absolute failure of journalism, which was written into the First Amendment for a reason.
Mhm.
The relationship between journalists and elected officials or government, it's deliberately adversarial.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be.
Yeah.
You're not supposed to be an agent of the state.
Yeah.
Right.
Anyway, I keep getting back to this journalist crap, but
Well, but I think it all comes down to that. I mean,
Yeah.
if you control the message, you control the mind. I
Mhm.
mean, that's how communism
Mhm.
worked through. It's
Yeah.
propaganda,
yeah,
and
you
if you
control
can
people's language, you can control their thoughts.
exactly,
Absolutely.
and if you get them by the emotions, if you're constant, and the right does this too. Okay,
Oh,
they
absolutely.
absolutely do this, and
Absolutely.
especially leading up to an election, right? You're going to see emotions running high on both sides.
I don't think either party has a monopoly on morality. Go ahead.
No, I agree
This
with
is
that.
true.
And
This
then
is
you're
true.
talking to somebody right now that has gotten in trouble, especially right before an election, of saying, "Hey, Republicans, let's not do the same things that some of the Democrats do and make up things. We have enough to work with."
When that
You
is
know,
exactly the conversations we should have.
Yeah, I really do believe that. We need to have independent-minded people who may lean right or may lean left. And I think it's what Tim here, who was involved in this, he's a Democrat, right? He leans left. He voted for Ryan Walters, but also voted for Joy Hoffmeister. It's an
It's
interesting.
interesting.
So
Yeah,
he's not
that's
the only one.
Yeah.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
he's not the only one. He's not the only one, and that shows that you should think not by party. You shouldn't be tribal. You should go after every candidate individually.
Mhm.
And even if I don't agree with who you voted with, think about it. Don't
Yeah.
let somebody else think for you.
That's true. Okay, let's get back to the parent school dynamic for a second. I'd love to get your take, Janelle.
Mhm.
And that is, when my kids are grown now, but when they were little, the teachers and administrators, we went to Edmond Public Schools and we had a very pleasant experience.
Mhm.
My kids had a good experience there. But the administrators and the teachers very much looked at us like partners.
Mhm.
It was a partnership.
Mhm.
Now I think the institute, I'm not pinpointing teachers, but I think the educational institution sees parents not as partners, but as obstacles.
Yeah.
That's a really
Because
good word to say that. A really
because
good way to put it.
because these parents are trying to instill a set of virtues that they don't want these kids to have.
Yeah. Well, have you experienced that with your kids?
I will say that having children, around the ages as mine, 11, 10, 9 years old, I think that seeing parents as an obstacle just nails it. Because, like you said, used to it was a partnership.
Mhm.
How can we both, make sure that our children get to the best that they're going to have by
They
the time
aren't
that they're
idiots.
18.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
Right?
threshold.
They
Yeah,
need our
just
help.
Let them graduate and not be idiots. Yeah.
Exactly. And I like what one particular woman said. I cannot remember her name right now, but she talked about how we've gone from the concept of it takes a village to that village is insane and it's
Yeah.
trying to raise my kid. The village has changed. You know
Mhm.
what I mean? And this doesn't, I just want everybody to know too that's watching. This is not an attack against teachers to act like that you're all just out there being crazy. We know there are amazing teachers. I have several people that I grew up with that I've known for well over 15 years that are amazing educators and they want to protect their students and all of that. But you have to understand that there's always going to be this elephant in the room. That something's not right in education. Something
Yeah.
is not right between the teacher-parent relationship that used to exist
When
because
you
it
ha-
doesn't exist anymore.
Oh,
Right.
yeah, and again, it's how much can you blame the teachers? They're doing what they're
Well,
being told to
And
do.
that is
And if you don't do it,
Right.
you get someone else
Exactly.
who will.
and they're doing
Exactly.
what they've been trained to do. That
Exactly.
and they are
Exactly,
yeah.
doing, and that's why I've been constantly saying we have to start at the top of the pipeline here. We have to we have to look at the university system. We have to look at how teachers are certified, what they have to be taught and put on a test to
Mhm.
pass certifications, and are they being instructed by administrators or DEI directors or student services directors to implant a certain political
some
ideology.
$15,000 a year or an hour consultant.
Right.
organization
Well, and that's
Mhm.
another
will
part is that
establish policy.
right, the policy is where this lives. So when you talk about anti-racism or critical race theory, right?
Mhm.
That if you read Ibram Kendi's book, How to Be an Anti-Racist, it's he couches it and defines it in terms of policy, public policy, that either you support a policy that discriminates to create equity and you're an anti-racist, or you
Mhm.
don't and you're a racist. He gives you no, but it's
Mhm.
always with what political position you support. And that's
Gotcha.
the goal. And
Yeah.
teachers are now being told to do that in their everyday classroom. The student services director, and it was the DEI director in Norman, she said, you must embed this in everything you do, not in addition to.
Wow.
And that situation, that parents understanding that and school board members understanding it,
Yeah.
and being able to identify the problem is what we need in order to fix it. If we
Yeah.
don't correctly identify it, we can't fix it.
Yeah.
Sure.
You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
and that's where I would love some of our. And I think Ryan Walters is a great guy because he understands a lot of this. He
Mhm.
understands some of the policy issues. He understands how it gets embedded. I know because I've talked to him about it,
Mhm.
and I know many people other have too. Janelle, I do want to get your perspective on this. I mean, obviously you're a Black woman,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
And
Obviously.
no,
Maybe
and
not.
an
True.
awesome one at that. Yeah, but just in terms of critical race theory and your kids maybe being taught that in school,
Mhm.
do you feel that is an empowering or a disempowering kind of philosophy for your kids who are obviously
Well, I think it's both.
really
Because you have to disempower another individual in order to empower yourself
Ooh.
through the avenue of CRT.
Oh, well
And
played.
I just
and that's why she is on the show, ladies and
Well, I
gentlemen,
just
because go ahead.
I'm not and I can't speak for every person who, I can't speak to Black America. I can't speak to what your experience was when you grew up. But you have to understand that I was raised by, two parents who were obviously, African American, that were staunch conservative voters my entire life. But you have to understand that I wasn't raised with this ideology that because of the color of my skin, that I was going to live one way. And because of the color of that person's skin, they were the reason why I was living that way. I was literally taught that I could do whatever it is that I wanted to do. And that as long as my life was aligned with, my faith, no one was going to be able to stop me from doing whatever I wanted. So I didn't grow up with that ceiling over the top of my thinking. And I've had people, I've had black people, I've had white people that have said, they've been confused by that. Well, obviously you've probably never experienced racism. I'm like, no, yes, I have. But racism is an afterthought to a person that isn't controlled by it. I'm not bothered by those types of things because it's like, well, if God wanted that person over there to be a different color, he would have made them a different color, but he did not. I'm not going to ask someone else to remove themselves and become invisible so that I can feel like I'm someone. That's insane.
Okay, so on that
Yeah.
note, can I ask you a question?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I'm a second generation American. My
Mm-hmm.
grandfather came here from Sicily.
Mm-hmm.
Nancy Pelosi is Italian.
Mm-hmm.
Ron DeSantis is Italian.
Mm-hmm.
No one has ever come up to me and said, "What kind of an Italian are you?"
Right. Right.
But
Right.
if they did, I would be so insulted.
Yeah.
Is that insulting if someone says that? I don't know that someone has.
I
but if
think
they
that
did,
I think that to a degree, I mean, it can be. I'm not really easily bothered by things, but I think that what's happened is that America is just like drowning in compartmentalization. I mean, we're
yes.
just drowning in it. And you can't even see the individual anymore because now it's, well, what kind are you? Well, are you this? Are you that? I mean, I had one
Well,
woman.
that's the whole paradigm of the left.
Well,
The
Exactly.
individual does not matter.
Well,
It's
Does not
group and
matter.
outcome.
and
Does
that
not
that
matter.
goes to, and that's why we named this show, I actually, group think or ungroup think,
Yeah.
because I think that what we want to be is Americans, right?
Absolutely.
And that's Martin Luther King talked about. He talked about fulfilling the promissory note
Mm-hmm.
for the African American community
Mm-hmm.
in the civil rights movement. But that has been perverted a little bit to say that no, we must raise someone or a group above another one
Absolutely.
in order to achieve some kind of equity, which is not equality.
Mm-hmm.
And I think your perspective is so valuable because you're preaching the message, I think, of what I've seen from a majority of Black Americans, which is they're strong.
Yeah.
They've overcome more adversity than we can imagine as a group of people, but in a goal to be an American, not to be
Absolutely.
a Black American or an Asian American or a white American or an Italian American.
And I think the fact, no matter what your racial, ethnic makeup is, I think most normal people, when they hear one political side saying, in order to understand what I'm saying and buy into what I'm saying, I'm going to need you to first abandon logic and reason.
Right.
Right.
Absolutely.
And you know why you should abandon logic and reason? Because it's a tool of white supremacy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And if you use they grab the emotion of that term,
Yeah.
right, and they smack you in the face with it because you don't want to be called a white supremacist.
You don't want to be
so
touched.
you back off, right?
Mhm.
And
but like if somebody, it's like racist. It
Mhm.
doesn't mean anything.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you can't draw a distinction between a guy who cut you off in traffic
Right.
and the grand wizard of the KKK,
Right.
then you
Right.
label them the same way. It's meaningless.
Right.
Right. But
And if everyone's a racist, then no one's.
but
Mhm.
You know?
let's bring this back to teachers for a second, because teachers are taught, to be more inclusive, to be more diverse, right?
Mhm.
And this word inclusive is used as a bit of a cudgel, and they're trained throughout their time in ed school or the college or even
Mhm.
your K through 12
Mhm.
that is the worst possible thing you can be, and then you're taught, as you should be. Well, see, that's the thing. Racism has been taught in schools in terms of about racism, about
Mhm.
slavery, about the civil rights movement.
Mhm.
I went through school, I graduated 2003. I learned about all of that stuff in
No
school,
one's
and it was the worst.
advocating
It-
not teaching
well,
those
I know,
things.
Yeah.
but because we were taught those things, that the moment, and we were taught that they were bad, we were actually taught they were really bad. B- When you get to 2022 and somebody calls you one of those things,
Mhm.
it has this emotional grab, especially when you're in a situation where you're a teacher and you can have parents very upset with you for making their kids feel
Yeah.
like they're being discriminated against.
Yeah.
And it gives outsized power to the administrators that are forcing this ideology when they say, well, you want to be in line with teaching DEI, so you need to treat one kid better than the other because of the color of their skin. A teacher's going to go, well, I have to. What are you going to? They want to keep their job. They don't want to be the next headline in the news.
Exactly.
You could not come up with a better recipe to build resentment
Mhm.
between and among those children
Right.
than a system like that.
Right.
One that anyone objectively can see is unfair.
Yeah.
That's a
Yeah.
resentment is the point, isn't
Yeah.
it? Because they want to split us. up.
Absolutely.
You know,
Absolutely. And you've got a whole generation that you can now, someone asked me recently, they said, well, what's the point, of doing this with CRT? Why can't you teach history without it? I'm like, you can teach history without it. First of all, like you just said, like no one's telling you that you can't. Like they're like, we can't teach about the Tulsa race riot without it. And I'm like, no, you can't
Says
teach it the
who?
way
yeah,
that
well,
they're saying that.
Yeah.
well,
But really, they're saying, well, we can't teach it the way that we
exactly.
want.
And let me give you
You
just
know.
because I've studied this a lot is CRT. They literally call themselves crits, right?
Mhm.
And they refer to their method of teaching as storytelling. What they
Bet
want
they
to do,
do.
like the 1619 Project, for example, they want to reframe history
Mm-hmm.
because it's all about narrative. It's rooted in postmodernism, which means there is no objective truth, right?
Absolutely.
There's no reality. The table isn't hard.
Yes.
It's what
Which
it,
means we can just flow however
we
we
can
want to
we can be
go.
whatever gender we
There's
want.
no
It's all in
God.
the same.
Yeah.
There's
No universal truth.
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Well, there's no objective reality that you can prove that's any better than the other.
But
So
that
your
has to be-
perception,
that has to be predicated on the belief that there's no authority higher than yourself.
yes, I agree
Mhm.
with that. But no, I completely agree with that. But even people who aren't Christians, James Lindsay, for example, is an agnostic or an atheist,
Mhm.
he can see the fact that, wait a minute, there is objective truth.
Mhm.
And the sky is blue, you can see it. The men are women, men aren't women, women aren't men.
Mhm.
You can see that.
Mhm.
But CRT is rooted in no, we need to reframe history in order to push everything towards a political goal.
Mhm.
Right.
And that political goal is to tear down the system,
Mhm.
rebuild it in a way that removes individual rights
Mhm.
and removes an idea of a national, not nationalist, okay, not because that's how they get you, right?
Yeah.
They call you Nazi, not nationalist, but national identity that unifies us as opposed to dividing us.
Yeah. When
Right?
really what it creates is an entire generation of children that are just end up being completely soulless, that can be easily manipulated, easily controlled, and really what they're after is their worldview.
Yeah.
That's really what
They
they're
want to
after.
remove their individual identity and replace
Absolutely.
it with a political
Yeah.
identity.
Yeah.
And that way, if you disagree, that's how they're dividing kids too,
Oh yeah.
from parents. Is that if they implant a moral political belief in a child,
Hmm.
right? That the child will view that as their personhood, as who they truly are. And so if the parent disagrees with it, the parent becomes evil,
Hmm.
and then
The obstacle.
they, they become the obstacle. And you see
Yeah.
so many people, I've had parent after parent after parent come to me say their kid went through 4 years of college and now they don't talk to them anymore because they vote for Donald Trump,
Mhm.
or they
Mhm.
support DeSantis or
Look
whomever it may be.
at history. Whenever a dictatorship is established,
Mhm.
Stalin's Russia,
Mhm.
Hitler's Germany,
Mhm.
first order of business, disrupt the child-parent bond.
That's
Absolutely.
Always first order of business.
Absolutely.
And that's true across whether you're talking about a fascist regime or a communist regime,
Mhm.
right? Whether you're talking
Mhm.
about the Nazi, they all did that to an
Mhm.
extent, because you talk
Yeah.
about the Hitler Youth, what they wanted to take them in and teach them something that might be different than what the teacher said.
Mhm.
The methods are the same.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
totalitarian system, all the methods are the
Yep.
same. And I think we use these words communism and fascism and all this stuff to our detriment sometimes.
Yeah, and people describe that as like two ends of a line of a political spectrum, but
Mhm.
I think they really bend toward each
Mhm.
other. What's the difference between Hitler and Stalin?
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
In effect, almost
One's a
nothing.
it comes up.
Well, and if you
There's-
actually trace back the philosophical roots of Nazism or fascism and communism, it all traces back to Marx.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah,
You know,
they're
it all
rooted in the
traces
same
back-
fundamental
And
ideology.
and there are some differences in terms of how it's spread across time, but it all traces back towards a kind of socialistic groupthink.
Yeah,
It
that
is.
the individual doesn't matter.
Mhm.
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 And radically inconsistent with scripture, not to get preachy.
No, it
but,
is.
But I think, again, it's important lesson you can take from history is
Yeah.
that when countries abandon Judeo-Christian values, terrible things happen.
They do.
That
They
is
do.
true.
Absolutely.
And we must understand, and I think this is a good point that you often see on places like the Daily Wire, that another part of postmodernism is that is- they believe that all values are equal. If you hold them, they're good. But history has taught us
Right.
different than that.
Hence the term your truth,
Right, your truth, right?
Yeah.
And
not the truth.
that is
Yeah.
that is such a lie that we're telling kids now,
Yeah.
that there are values that you can hold that will make you more successful in life. And this is across nationalities, this is across
Absolutely.
cultures, that a core family or a core holding of family values is a building block for all civilizations and has been since the beginning of time. And we're trying to teach kids now that you don't need to get married,
Right, but I
that
mean,
you don't need to have kids, that you don't need to build that unit.
Mm-hmm.
What were you gonna say?
Mm-hmm.
well, I think Janelle.
Oh,
So
go ahead.
I
No,
don't.
I was just agreeing. Go ahead.
First of all, let's define family. Okay,
Yeah.
like as we traditionally define it, which is a married mother and father who live with their biological children.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, there are obviously wonderful one parent homes and there are horrible two parent homes.
Mm-hmm.
But the ideal setup is married mother and father who live with their biological children. You know why I know that? Ask anyone who is a child of divorce
Mm-hmm.
and ask them, if you could have grown up with your parents living together, would you have?
Yeah.
Down the line, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And I think, I don't want to put a number on it, but I would say a significant amount of society's ills can be traced back to that single fact, is that
Yeah.
the family is not valued.
Yeah. Well, and
Absolutely.
you as a teacher, and you ask any teacher, and if they're being honest with you, they're going to tell you that the students who do the best in their classrooms are the ones with involved family, mother and father,
Mm-hmm.
parents, and with a stable home life.
Of course.
And the
Mhm.
minute you break that apart,
Mm-hmm.
you ruin stability. And stability for a child, especially when you're talking about 0 to 4 and then 10 to 14.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, you can ruin an entire trajectory of a child's life if you don't have stability, especially during those points in time.
But why in the
Absolutely.
world should you make the sacrifice of marriage and children when it's being hammered into you that you are the most important
Yeah.
thing here?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That you shouldn't bend to the ways of the world.
Mm-hmm.
The world should bend to your ways.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And once you establish that level of narcissism and you get an entire generation thinking,
Yeah.
I've been shortchanged,
Yeah.
now you have all the elements you need for a revolution.
Well,
Yeah.
and let's talk about that with teachers for a second,
Mhm.
because teachers have this weird dichotomy or this weird kind of conflicting way of being viewed in society.
Mhm.
We view them as heroes,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
We view them as just we love our teachers, which we do.
Mhm.
And trust me, I've
Mhm.
got a teaching certificate. I love teachers, but we also view them as victims at the same time. They're not paid enough. They're not, and now it seems to be morphing that they are heroes because they're victims. And that is when you have teachers being treated that way,
Mm-hmm.
and then kids are in the realm or in the direct influence of these teachers 8 hours a day, 180 days a year. Why wouldn't we expect
Yeah.
kids to come across as, well, in order to be a hero, I've got to be a victim,
Mm-hmm.
or in
Mhm.
order to be seen as good, I've got to be some kind of oppressed group like
Mhm.
trans or
Absolutely.
you know,
Absolutely.
and
Victimhood, I mean, is just rampant, in our nation. And it's across the board. It crosses all lines, whether depending upon, your sex, your race or whatever. It's like whoever's the biggest victim, you become the brave one. That's just living your life. When, I'm thinking, well, we all have stories. You know what I mean?
well, but here
But
let's take this to a more practical thing.
Mhm.
That we did our cast the other night on the election.
Mhm.
Did
Mhm.
anybody expect Fetterman to win? And there's numbers out there saying that lar- a large portion of the reason why he may have won was because people they felt sorry for him.
Mhm.
I
Interesting.
mean, is that what you want to teach your kids, that in order to be successful,
Yeah.
you need to make people? Is that what
Well,
you teach your kids to know?
no,
No.
absolutely not. Absolutely not.
I mean, that's a fundamental difference between the left and the right. And I
Yeah.
think you break it down to, again, in the most broad terms, that people on the right want policy that does good.
Yeah.
People on the left want policy that feels good.
Absolutely.
That's a
Absolutely.
great distinction. That is a great distinction. Now, I will
Hey,
say
thanks.
this. Yeah. I think the right.
Just sit
I-
back and admire my brilliance.
I'll do it for you. Andrew. I think the right does that at times too, but I think it's much more the left has embodied and embraced this, that what you just described there, to the point that it's killing the Democratic Party. I think. When you
Well,
see
you
at
would think.
midterm, with 5 million more Republican votes,
Yeah.
even though it didn't kind of translate the way that we wanted it to, um, it that says something.
It does. It definitely speaks.
And I think most parents want their kids to be self-sufficient.
Absolutely.
And if we constantly teach our kids to rely on the state or rely on the school or rely on their university or
Or
rely
mom
on-
and dad. Jeez. Yeah.
Yeah.
Believe me, no one more than me wants their children independent.
Well, yeah, and that's something we see now too, is that you have
Yeah.
people living at home until they're 35 years old. And
Yeah.
and what did the boomers do
I
to
would've
us, man?
loved
I'm telling you. I'm telling you.
If my parents let me stay at home till I was 35, I would have been the happiest 35-year-old.
Right. Right.
Well,
yeah,
that
hold on. Can we get back to teachers for
Yeah,
a
let's go
second?
ahead.
You're talking about teachers again. You talk about painting people with a broad brush. This idea that all teachers are heroes.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Let me tell you my K through 12 experience. I had 3 teachers who were outstanding, memorable. I had about 3 teachers who were absolutely horrible. They were memorable, and the rest were forgettable.
Mhm.
And I think that's most every industry.
Mhm.
Probably
it seems like a bell curve.
Yeah,
Mhm,
yeah,
mhm,
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's do I appreciate what teachers do? Of course I do. But to overstate the significance, I just I would hate for an inordinate amount of political power be given to a group simply because it's taboo to say anything negative.
And just to
go
speak
ahead.
to that really quickly, I think that what we see what's happened with teachers, because that's exactly what they're doing. It opens the door to allow teachers to be activists and to be held up for it.
Mhm.
And it's the exact same thing that they did with, the medical field during COVID. Doctors and nurses were so elevated as heroes. And again, we're not trying to demonize anybody. We're
Right.
not trying to say that doctors are bad or that nurses are bad. What we're saying is that it there was a narrative that was created that's now, if you were to question medicine or to question doctors, now it's okay, well, you're the threat.
Yeah.
Right.
There's something wrong with you.
Right. If you
when in
disagree, then
actuality,
you
yeah.
are and then that's the group against group.
Yeah.
Well, it's his stance. I'm above question.
Yes.
And the
Exactly.
unions
Yeah.
who use teachers as human shields
They
Yes.
do.
to push through a political agenda that most teachers, if asked, probably would not want.
Well,
Yeah.
and taking that
Yeah.
equation back to DEI CRT, that's what
Mhm.
diversity is often done. It's we're going to take up this group of people
Mhm.
and we are going to say, well, if you are speaking against us, you're speaking against all Black people or all trans people,
Right.
and they
Mhm.
use them as human shields. That's the DEI,
Mhm.
and therefore you can't disagree with them. And if you can't disagree with them, they get to run roughshod over all of the
Yep.
institutions, and
Yep.
and unions have done that
Which
over and over again. Is that they don't work in the best interest of teachers,
Mhm.
while saying that they are, and say if you disagree with Randy Weingarten, then you're attacking all teachers. No,
yeah, you
that's
hate
not
teachers.
it, right?
Mhm.
And that's ridiculous.
and that's because the left has 2 forms of attack. That's it.
Mhm.
Name calling,
Mhm.
speculating on motives.
Yep.
That's it.
Yep.
Mhm.
That's all they got.
Yep.
Logic and reason. You'll bury them every time.
Right.
But if they can call you a racist, if they
Yeah.
say you hate teachers,
Yeah.
name call, speculate on motives,
Mhm.
then
Yeah.
And that's where, to a large part, they've been successful by
They have been.
dictating the geography of the conversation.
Yeah.
Well, Gino, if you had to, and this is a hard question, but I would like to know, how do we stop that from happening? How do we stop this? Because it seems that the more emotional that the left get with their arguments,
Mhm.
the more emotional the right want to get with their arguments. It just builds,
Sure.
and you get this kind of rage that happens on both sides to the
Mhm.
point that you have no thinking.
Mhm.
Do you think how do we stop this in our society if we want to actually get back to a point where we're thinking rationally?
Well, I think, to be honest, there's always going to be this going on. I think there's always going to be, a sector of both sides that's always going to just engage in the rage.
A
They're,
conflict.
they're
there's
always
always
going to do
conflict.
that.
Well, especially
They're
if there's
always gonna
money
do
to be
that.
made off of it.
Exactly. But going back to what we're all doing here, I think it goes back to there has to be a place where people like us begin to make messaging and investigative reporting an art form.
Mm,
And I think that, again, because it doesn't exist right now. I'm just going to tell you that
Right.
right now, because they're getting away with this.
Mhm.
They're not even, like he said, speculation. They're getting away with burying the truth by just attaching one small, maybe half truth. They can attach that to you. They can bury you with it.
Yes.
We have the whole truth, and what are we doing with it?
Right.
And you know what I mean? Like
I
what
know
like what are
exactly
we
what you're
That's the
actually?
root of
Yeah,
cancel culture, right? It's like you're
exactly.
going to take historical figures are the best way to come at that. It's like, we're going to Thomas Jefferson owned slaves, so therefore he did nothing good, and we've got to remove his
You see
statues.
what I'm talking
Right?
about? Yeah.
Yeah. That's it's that kind of mindset. We're going to pin you with this, and because we hit you with that emotion,
Yep.
we're going to completely demonize this person who did great things, and it applies to people happening today.
Yeah.
Right?
And the message to today's youth is you will be judged by next generations by
Mm-hmm.
your absolute worst character.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
you better get in line and you better comply.
Yeah.
Exactly, because you don't
Yeah.
want to end up somebody who, if you
Whose
speak out too
statue
much,
is-
right? Yeah,
Exactly.
whose statue.
Right.
But here, and I think this is a great point that I heard the other day, that that back in Roman times, or the Caesar, right? If he was a horrible leader, they would tear down his monuments and stuff after he died, right? What you see now in public is you will have your name, everything drug in the mud. You will have everything that's ever been said about you, drug through the mud in front of your eyes. Not even the worst rulers in the history of mankind
Mhm.
had to deal with that.
In
Now
real
kids,
time,
right,
yeah.
in real time, where you're actually looking at it and watching it happen. And our kids are faced with that. They're in school now. Not only is it being told to them in the classroom, you don't want to be seen as this kind of person,
Mm-hmm.
because this is what could happen to you
Mm-hmm.
if you do that. So you, just like you said, you must get in line, and it's a fear-based cudgel.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that we have to, my opinion, we have to look at the people who are pushing it, not just the teachers, because we've had a lot of focus on teachers.
Mm-hmm.
But this goes to principals, this goes to professors,
Mm-hmm.
this goes to the administrators
Administrators.
at the
Mhm.
university level
Mhm.
who are
you know,
incentivizing
and
this.
I think this is a good illustration of that. I mean, as long as I've lived in Oklahoma, which is 20 plus years, as many legislative sessions as I've observed, education is always front and center.
Mhm.
I have never once ever heard a conversation in any committee, even though education is really not my field, but I've never heard in a committee or on the floor one lawmaker say, why is college tuition
Oh,
rising at 450% of the inflation rate and has been for the last 30 years?
Wow.
well, because you got to build a community to take care of your kids.
Because
Right?
if you say that, you're
Yeah.
criticizing teachers.
Yeah.
And that's what I
Yes.
mean by human
Yeah.
shield. They're an obstacle to good,
Mhm.
sound public policy.
That's
Yeah.
right.
And whenever you make a subject taboo, that's the problem.
Mhm.
That's
You
right.
could say the same thing about firefighters. I
Mhm.
love firefighters, but God knows I could find efficiency.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
But don't you dare say
But-
that.
Mm-hmm.
Abraham Lincoln, another good example. You may not criticize Abraham Lincoln,
Yeah.
but there's a lot to criticize Abraham Lincoln.
Well, he was a human being.
Absolutely.
I hate taboo subjects.
Yeah.
Yes. No, I do.
Yeah.
I do too.
Because
And
it
Yeah.
stifles thought and it stifles solution.
I
Yeah.
hate taboo subjects, but I think that it also underscores the need to drill in to not just, okay, the university is a problem, but what in the university is the problem?
Mm-hmm.
It's in the bureaucracy, it's in the diversity, equity, and inclusion, system that's billion-dollar industry pushing a political narrative. But we can't get some legislators do, but to go and say this out loud, because they could be painted as being racist or being, well, you
And
don't
they
like
will be.
diversity,
And
you don't
they
like
will be.
inclusion,
Absolutely.
and
Yes.
and they will be painted that way. How do we go after the problem
Mm-hmm.
and actually fix the problem if every time you actually get close to the issue of actually the one that you need to grab a hold of and fix, you get hit with that emotional argument?
There needs to be more people saying, shut up and let him talk,
Mm-hmm.
than more people saying, boo, shut up.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Does that
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah. I think there has to be more. We did my husband and I did a video, and we talked about, basically it was kind of diving into, I don't want to refer to it as some kind of, scientific understanding behind the power of more than one person being willing to stand up. I wouldn't call it scientific, but there were studies that have been done all throughout, the past, 70 years, that pertain to what happens when one person is empowered, and how in this particular study, how there were people that denied reality that was happening right in front of them because they were being forced to deny it on their own.
Hmm.
But when other people gathered around them and also saw the same thing, they didn't want to deny reality, and they felt like that they could actually look
Yeah.
at it and say, that is an apple sitting on that table.
It's like the emperor has no clothes.
Right.
Exactly,
Mhm.
exactly. And so that's a big issue. But the media also controls that as well. And I think that's why
Yeah,
groups like
yeah.
this
You
is
have a media
important.
saying, no, the emperor does have clothes.
Exactly.
Right.
Go ahead.
Exactly.
I'm sorry.
Exactly. No, but they're blowing things up too to make people feel like, well, you're the only one that believes that. You're the only person that, that thinks that. When in reality, it could not be further from the truth.
Yeah.
There's actually most people in their beliefs are not outnumbered at all.
Yeah.
But they feel outnumbered because the media can present something to you that says you need to be quiet, because if you come out and say this, all these people are going to come against you, when in reality, you have more people on your side
Right.
than you
Well,
realize.
Because they're tapping into the number one fear of every human being.
Yep.
The fear of being embarrassed.
Right.
Yes.
Well, and peer
Yes.
pressure is the strongest force on the planet.
Yes.
You know,
Yes. Yes.
no, it's okay.
No,
It's okay. Yeah, peer pressure is the strongest force on the planet. And I had a teacher who told me that, and it rings true.
Yeah.
And this is something in terms of propaganda. You will see studies used sometimes where, and they do this in the trainings in schools for teachers. So you have a DEI trainer that comes in and teaches a teacher what to do in a classroom to
Mhm.
be equitable and to preach
Sure.
equity. And they show them a survey taken at a DEI conference. It says 85% of your fellow teachers
Mm,
agree that this is the most important thing.
mhm.
And so anyone in the room is sitting there going, okay, well, I'm obviously,
Well,
if
4 out
I
of
feel
5
different,
dentists agree.
right, exactly. Well, it's just like, yeah, it's like, 4 out of 5 doctors
I'll
approve
use
this
Colgate,
cigarette.
I guess.
You know what I mean?
Right,
That's it.
yeah,
But that is
yeah.
the kind of cudgel that they've used on these teachers.
Yeah.
And so I have a soft spot for some of these teachers who
Oh, I
are
agree.
just
Yeah.
doing their job.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
absolutely. And they
They're
don't
just-
feel like that they have, we spoke earlier how there are teachers that they they see what's going on. They know that it's not right, but
Mhm.
they have struggled to find their voice. And I just want to say that I get it.
Mhm.
I get that part where they feel like that they're being pitted
Yeah.
against student,
Yeah.
parent,
Right.
the union, all these different things are going on, and they're thinking about their families.
Mhm.
They're thinking about their kids,
Yeah.
and they're thinking about, well, I'm going to be, immediately going to be, just completely shot down. I'm probably going to lose my job, the whole 9 yards.
Sure.
That is a huge conflict, probably inner conflict that's going on. So,
Yeah.
but I think more teachers, though, if they felt supported, I think that they would probably have the courage to say, I'm not going to get in line with this. But a lot of teachers, I think that they are struggling to feel like that people are actually behind them. So they just kind of hide in the shadows there.
Well, and if they get pitted in the media
Yeah.
as this middle person, as a human
yeah.
shield,
Oh, yeah.
because that keeps the fire off the administrators.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It keeps and that's the one
Yeah.
thing I cannot stand is when you have,
Oh, that's disgusting.
it's
Yeah.
well,
Yeah.
you're attacking teachers if you're attacking the administrator. If you're criticizing the school board, then you're attacking teachers.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's just not
If you're
the case.
anti-faculty, you're anti-science.
Exactly,
You
right?
make
He
yourself
is the science,
synonymous.
Andrew.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so you make yourself synonymous with the virtue.
Yes. Yeah. And
Yeah.
that is a huge problem. I hope that's what we can
It's so
start
deceptive. Is manipulative.
right.
Yeah.
And I hope that's what we can start doing here at Project 46, the UnWokable Podcast, Red River TV, having these
Special
conversations.
assignment.
Special assignment. Yes. All of us are joining together. And I'm sorry about that. That we can start building an apparatus to
yes.
let's make people think again.
Yes.
Let's help
Yes.
people think again.
Yes.
Let's help people rationalize through problems without their emotions, without letting the elephant rule the rider, so to speak.
Absolutely.
And I think that's what we're trying to do here at Project 46. I think it's what we're trying to do with all of our adventures and why
Absolutely.
we're joining together.
I'm not sure
Absolutely.
we succeeded today, but we gave it a darn good shot.
Well, no, I think we did. And this is a show that we're going to do every week, guys.
Yeah.
And we're going to all do our own things during the week, and we're going to partner together and be on each other's shows. But we want to show the people of Oklahoma that we can start thinking again, that we can start bringing back some of the normalcy to our lives that has left us over the last 3 or 4 years.
Absolutely.
And
That'd be nice.
and have
Yeah.
rational conversations, because we do not agree on everything.
No, we do not.
We do not, and you may see that. But at the end of the day, we're going to
For
say,
instance, that's a terrible shirt.
I know your shirt's really bad too. I hate it. But let everybody give a shout out. Andrew, you first. Where can everybody find you? Where can they see special assignment? And
We're thinking this weekend they can probably find me in the gutter with a bottle of Jack Daniels in my hand. No, I do a special assignment, and I'll give a quick Project 46 plug for anyone who's watching. We're in our brand new studios. It doesn't look like it. It's a work in progress,
Yeah.
but we are launching a bunch of new shows, tons of new content,
Yeah.
and we encourage anyone who's watching to connect us with conservative business owners who
Yeah.
appreciate what we're doing. This, like any media outlet, we need sponsors
Yeah.
to survive.
absolutely.
The electricity that runs this, these computers, the cameras,
Yeah.
it's fun, but it ain't free. And so, we're always looking for like-minded conservative business owners who like what we're doing, see the value in it, and want to partner.
Well, and there's going to be a subscription
go.
service coming out, and
Yes.
there'll be an app that's coming out soon. But you can go to the website project46.com.
And 46 is spelled out.
Yes, 46. All
not
FO.
the numbers 46.
Is it FO? Okay, yeah, FORT. Yeah, no, Power. Yeah, it's redrivertv.com, and you can also find me on the UnWokable Podcast on YouTube and Twitter and all of those kinds of things. But I think what our goal here is to start unifying and going together. Janelle, where can we find you?
Well, you guys know where you can find me. You can find me on Facebook. Obviously, you can find Red River TV on YouTube and on Facebook as well. But also on the platform, here with Project 46. And I have to agree, that in order to, I've said this from the beginning, we're not building this because we want to sit here and have fun. We're building this for Oklahomans.
Even though we are having fun.
We are having
I
great
think-
fun. I don't know. We'll see. Anyways,
She may kick us out before too long.
this was good today, but
Yeah.
I want Oklahomans to understand that we are attempting to build a platform for you, the viewer, especially if you live here in Oklahoma, so that you have a voice again in the state of Oklahoma. And so supporting groups like this is very, very important, because we can't empower you if we don't have other people that are supporting what we're doing and supporting our efforts. And so it's very, very important, obviously.
Yes, please support Project 46, support Red River TV, support Special Assignment. We're all working together, and we're going to be doing this every week. If you have topics you'd like to hear us talk about, put those in the comments of each of these videos.
Of course, we only got to 10% of the
I know we
topics.
only got to 10,
listen
and that's
after
great. And this is
It was a good conversation today.
I think it's good, and
Good chat.
and we're going to focus a lot on local issues as they come up,
Yes.
and you will see more of that. It will be Oklahoma centric, but not Oklahoma exclusive.
Absolutely.
If you want to say that, yeah, and
steal that.
yeah. Well,
Yeah.
don't steal it. You have to pay me for it. No, pay Project 40.
Copyright
Yeah.
office first.
Yeah. So thank you everybody for the coming to the show today, and we will see you next week right here on UnGroup Think.
Are we out?